Get out. Take your bad luck and leave this house. The heavy wooden door of the Park family mansion slammed shut. Anita stood on the hard pavement, her fingers shaking as she gripped the handle of one small suitcase. The wind in Seoul was biting, cutting through her dress. Please, mother-in-law, Anita screamed, hitting the door with her palm. It is late. I have nowhere to go. My husband just died. I am carrying his child. No answer. Only the sound of the gate locking from the inside. Just 2 months ago, Anita was the happiest woman. She moved from Nigeria to marry Gummin, the love of her life. They didn't care about the gossips, but then the car accident took him. Now his family called her a cursed foreigner. They said she only wanted their money. They didn't even wait for the funeral flowers to dry before throwing her out like trash. Anita felt a sharp pain in her belly. She gasped, holding her stomach. Be brave, little one, she whispered. She started walking. She didn't know where she was going. Her phone was dead, and she had only a few thousand won in her pocket. The neon lights of the city blurred as tears filled her eyes. She reached a dark alleyway near the Gangnam district. Her legs gave out. She sat on a cold stone step, shivering. Suddenly, 3 men appeared from the shadows. They didn't look like kind people. They wore leather jackets and smelled of cigarettes. Hey, beautiful, one said in rough Korean. You look lost and pregnant. That's a double prize. Anita tried to stand up, but her knees were like water. Please leave me alone. I have nothing. The man reached for her suitcase. We will decide that. Let her go. The voice was like ice, deep, smooth, and dangerous. The thugs froze. Anita looked up. A tall man stood there. He was wearing a long black wool coat that cost more than a house. His hair was slicked back, and his eyes were dark like the bottom of the ocean. He didn't have a weapon, but the way he stood made the air feel heavy. Yoon Ki-tae, one of the thugs, whispered, his face turning pale. The Dragon of the North. We didn't know she was yours, boss. The tall man stepped into the light. This was Ki-tae, the man every businessman feared and every woman dreamed of. He didn't look at the thugs. He only looked at Anita, her dark skin glowing under the street lamp, her eyes filled with pain, and her hand protective over her baby bump. She is not mine, Ki-tae said, his voice low. But you are breathing my air. Leave now. The thugs ran, without looking back. Ki-tae walked toward Anita. He stopped 2 feet away. He didn't offer a hand. He just watched her. Why is a pregnant woman sleeping on the dirt? Anita wiped her face, trying to keep her pride. My in-laws, they threw me out. Ki-tae narrowed his eyes. He knew the Park family. They were his rivals. Greedy, weak people. To see them treat a woman like this made something hot burn in his chest. The Parks are fools, Ki-tae said. He reached out and suddenly grabbed her suitcase. Come, you cannot stay here. Where? Anita asked, breathless. Ki-tae leaned down, his face inches from hers, the scent of expensive cologne and tobacco wrapped around her. To my house, but remember, Anita, once you enter my world, there is no going back. As he helped her up, Anita saw a black tattoo of a dragon peeking from under his shirt sleeve. She knew who he was, the ruthless rival of her late husband's family, the man they warned her never to cross. And now she was going home with him. The car was black, long and silent, like a shark moving through the dark streets of Seoul. Anita sat in the back seat, her hands gripped tight over her belly. Beside her, Ki-tae didn't say a word. He didn't look at her. He just stared out the window, his jaw tight. The air in the car smelled like expensive leather and something dangerous. When the car stopped, Anita gasped. It wasn't a house. It was a fortress. High gray walls, gold lights, and a gate that opened slowly, like a giant mouth. As the door opened, Anita stepped out shivering. Immediately, 10 men in black suits bowed so low their heads almost touched their knees. Welcome home, boss, they shouted in one voice. Then they saw her. Anita stood there, her dark skin a beautiful contrast against the white marble of the driveway. Her braids were a bit messy from the wind, and her pregnant belly was clear under her dress. The guards' eyes went wide, their mouths dropped. In 5 years, Ki-tae had never brought a woman to this house. Not a girlfriend, not a worker. And now he was bringing a pregnant foreigner. Don't stare, Ki-tae said. His voice wasn't loud, but every man immediately looked at the floor. Alicia, come here. A middle-aged woman in a neat uniform ran out. She looked at Anita, then at Kite, then back at Anita. She looked like she had seen a ghost. Master, who is? She stays in the East Wing, Kite said. Would you walking past everyone without looking back? Feed her. Wash her. If she cries, you lose your job. Anita watched his tall back disappear into the shadows of the massive hallway. She felt like a bird trapped in a golden cage. The East Wing was bigger than Anita's entire family home in a crow. The bed was covered in silk that felt like water. But Anita couldn't sleep. She stayed awake, thinking of her late husband and the cold eyes of her in-laws. She fell asleep only when the sun started to peek through the heavy curtains. The next morning, Anita walked down the giant staircase. She saw Kite. He was dressed in a charcoal gray suit, his tie perfect, his shoes shining like glass. He was holding a leather briefcase, talking to a man in a suit. Anita felt shy, but she remembered her manners. "Good morning, Mr. Kite," she said softly, bowing her head a little. "Thank you for last night." Kite stopped. He looked at her for 1 second. Anita felt her heart skip. He didn't smile. He didn't even say good morning. He just raised one hand, a cold, short gesture, as if saying, "Don't waste my breath. I am busy." Then he walked out the door, the engine of his sports car roaring like a beast as he drove away. Anita felt a bit hurt. "So cold," she whispered. "Don't mind him, dear," a voice said. It was Alicia, the maid. She was smiling kindly. "The master is a man of few words, but he brought you here. That is a miracle by itself." Alicia took Anita to a bathroom that looked like a spa. There was a tub made of black stone. Alicia helped Anita undress gently. "You have such beautiful skin," the maid whispered, looking at Anita's rich, dark complexion. "And the baby, he will be strong." They spent the afternoon pampering her. Anita felt the stress leaving her body. They brought her a new dress, a soft cream-colored silk gown that flowed over her bump. She sat in the garden eating fresh fruits and breathing the clean air. For the first time since Gumman died, Anita felt safe. She thought, maybe God sent me an angel in a black suit. But the peace did not last. Suddenly, the loud screech of tires broke the silence. A silver Mercedes-Benz parked violently in the driveway. A woman stepped out. She was in her 60s, wearing a traditional handak made of the most expensive silk with a heavy jade ring on her finger. Her face was pulled tight in a permanent frown. This was Madame Yoon, Kite's mother, the woman people called the Iron Tiger. She marched into the house, her heels clicking like gunshots. When she saw Anita sitting in the garden, her face turned red. "What is this?" Madame Yoon screamed. "Alicia, who invited this charcoal into my son's house." Alicia ran out, trembling. "Madam, the master brought her. She was in trouble." "Lies." Madame Yoon walked up to Anita. She didn't see a woman in need. She saw an enemy. "I know your type. You used your black jazz on my son, didn't you? You used your African voodoo to blind him. A pregnant widow. You are a curse." Anita stood up, her heart drumming. "Madam, please. I am just a guest. Your son saved me." "Guest?" The woman laughed. A cold, mean sound. "You are a parasite. Son is the king of the city. He doesn't need a dirty foreigner and a child that isn't his." She turned to the guards. "Throw her out now." "But madam," one guard stammered. "The boss said, 'I am his mother,'" she roared. "If she is still here in 1 minute, you are all fired. I will strip you of everything. Get her out of my sight." The guards looked at each other, terrified. They approached Anita. "We are sorry, miss," one whispered. They grabbed Anita's arms. She tried to struggle, but she was weak. They dragged her through the marble hall, her feet sliding on the floor. Madame Yoon followed, spitting insults. "Go back to where you came from. Don't try to ruin my son with your bad luck." They pushed Anita out the main gate. She fell onto the hard gravel of the driveway. The heavy iron gates began to hiss shut. Anita looked up at the gray sky, feeling the cold air hit her skin again. The silk dress was now stained with dirt. She was back on the street. Madame Yoon stood behind the gate, smiling like a demon. "Never come back, witch." But then a sound. A loud, Aggressive horn blasted from the street. A black SUV tore around the corner, burning rubber. It didn't slow down. It headed straight for the gate, forcing it to stop mid-clo. The car screeched to a halt just inches from where Anita lay. The door flew open. Ki-tae stepped out. He didn't look at his mother. He didn't look at the guards. He looked at Anita on the ground, the dirt on her dress, and the tears in her eyes. His face went from cold to pure, terrifying rage. The air around him seemed to freeze. "Who?" Ki-tae said, his voice a low, deadly growl that made the guards' knees shake. "Touched her." The air in the courtyard was thick with fear. As Ki-tae stepped out of his SUV, the guards didn't just stand still. They dropped to their knees. The heavy sound of their knees hitting the gravel was the only noise besides the idling engine. "Master, we were told." One guard stammered, his face touching the dirt. Ki-tae didn't look at them, his eyes were fixed on Anita. She was crumpled on the ground, her cream silk dress stained with gray dust, her hands trembling as she tried to shield her belly. The sight made something inside Ki-tae snap. A dark, cold rage he usually kept locked behind his rib cage began to boil. "Who?" Ki-tae repeated, his voice dropping to a whisper that was scarier than a shout. "Touched her." The maids who had followed the commotion outside all fell to their knees in a row. Without saying a word, they slowly raised their shaking fingers and pointed. They pointed at the woman standing behind the gate with a proud chin. Madame Yoon didn't flinch. She stepped forward, her expensive handak rustling. "I did, and I ordered them to do it. Son, look at her. She is a nobody. She is not one of us. She is a widow from a family of failures. I want her out of this house before she brings her black jazz and her bad luck into our bloodline." Ki-tae walked toward his mother. He didn't stop until he was inches from her face. He was much taller, his shadow swallowing her whole. The guards held their breath. Nobody spoke to the Iron Tiger like this. "Mother," Ki-tae said, his voice like a blade sliding over ice. "Listen to me clearly, because I will only say this one time." Madame Yoon blinked, her pride wavering for the first time. "If you were not the woman who gave birth to me," Ki-tae continued, "I would have ordered my men to deal with you right here. And after that, I would have you locked in the dungeon beneath this house until you forgot what the sun looked like." Madame Yoon gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "Ki-tae, how dare you? Never lay a hand on Anita again." Ki-tae cut her off. His eyes were dead and dark. "She is my guest, a very special guest. If a single hair on her head is harmed while I am away, I will hold you personally responsible. Do you understand?" He didn't wait for her answer. He turned to the maids. "Take her inside. Clean her. Call the doctor. If she is not smiling by the time I come back, you are all finished." The maids scrambled. They lifted Anita gently, whispering apologies as they hurried her back into the warmth of the mansion. Ki-tae stood in the driveway watching them go, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white. He didn't look at his mother again. He stayed outside in the cold until the sun went down, smoking a single cigarette, his mind a storm of thoughts he couldn't explain. Later that night, the house was silent. The golden lamps were dimmed, casting long, dancing shadows on the marble walls. Anita couldn't stay in bed. Her heart was heavy with a mix of fear and a strange bubbling warmth she didn't want to feel. She walked slowly down to the grand sitting room. There she saw him. Ki-tae was sitting in a large leather armchair. He had taken off his suit jacket, his white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal the dark ink of the dragon tattoo on his forearm. He was holding a business magazine, his eyes moving across the pages. Anita stood at the entrance for a moment. He looked so peaceful, yet so dangerous. She took a deep breath and stepped into the light. "Mr. Ki-tae," she whispered. He didn't move. He didn't even flip the page. "I came to say thank you," Anita said, her voice soft but steady. "Again? You saved me from the street, and today you saved me from your mother. I don't know why you are doing this for me, but I am grateful." Ki-tae remained silent. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall. It was like she was talking to a statue. Anita waited. She expected him to say something. Anything. Maybe you're welcome, or even go back to bed. But he just kept reading, his face a mask of stone. After a full minute of awkward silence, Anita felt a flush of embarrassment. Is he bipolar? She wondered. One minute he is threatening his mother to protect me, the next minute he acts like I am a fly on the wall. He is so kind in his actions, but so mean with his spirit. She turned around and walked away, her heart feeling a little heavy. As she climbed the stairs, she didn't see Ki-tae's eyes move. He wasn't reading the magazine. He had been staring at the same sentence for 10 minutes. He waited until she was gone before he let out a breath. He didn't know he was holding. At 2 a.m., the silence of the mansion was shattered by a scream. It wasn't a small cry. It was a sound of pure, raw agony. Ki-tae was awake in a second. He didn't think. He didn't put on shoes. He ran down the hall and burst into Anita's room. She was on the floor clutching her stomach, her face covered in a cold sweat. "Help," she gasped, her eyes rolling back. "The baby. It hurts. Please." The drama from earlier. The stress, the falling on the gravel, the screaming. It had been too much for her body. "Alicia, get the car?"
기대래요.
His voice echoed through the entire house. He didn't wait for the guards. He scooped Anita up in his arms. She felt so light, so fragile. He felt her blood staining his white shirt. And for the first time in years, the ruthless Don felt a flash of real paralyzing terror. "Stay with me, Anita," he muttered, his voice cracking. "Don't you dare close your eyes." They flew through the streets of Seoul. Ki-tae drove like a madman, ignoring red lights, his hand gripping the steering wheel so hard it groaned. At the hospital, the nurses rushed out with a stretcher. "She's losing blood," someone shouted. "Get her to the O now." Ki-tae was pushed back as the double doors slammed shut. He stood in the hallway, his white shirt covered in red. He looked like a man who had just come from a war. Hours passed. The sun began to rise. Painting the hospital hallway in a sickly pale yellow. Finally, the doctor walked out. He looked tired. He looked defeated. "Mr. Ki-tae," the doctor asked. Ki-tae stood up. "Is she okay?" "The mother will survive," the doctor said, sighing. "But I am so sorry. The trauma was too great. The labor was forced too early. We couldn't save them. Twin boys." Ki-tae felt like he had been punched in the soul. Twin boys. He didn't cry. He didn't move. But cold, murderous darkness filled his eyes. Those babies weren't his. They were the children of his rival. The man who had died and left Anita alone. So why did it feel like his own heart had been ripped out? Why did the loss of 2 children he never knew make him want to burn the whole world down? He thought of the Park family, Anita's in-laws, the people who threw a pregnant woman onto the street like she was garbage. The people whose cruelty had just killed 2 innocent lives. Ki-tae didn't go into Anita's room to comfort her. He couldn't. Not yet. He turned and walked out of the hospital, his steps heavy and purposeful. He got into his car and drove. He didn't go home. He drove straight to the wealthy neighborhood of the Park family. He stopped the car in front of their tall golden gates. He sat there for a moment, looking at the house where they were probably sleeping peacefully, unaware of the blood on Ki-tae's shirt. Ki-tae's phone rang. It was his lead enforcer. "Boss, where are you?" Ki-tae stared at the Park mansion, his eyes glowing with a fire that would never go out. "Bring the gasoline," he said, his voice a low, terrifying whisper. "And bring the chains tonight. The Park family learns what happens when you touch something that belongs to me." He hung up. He knew what he was going to do. He wasn't just a rival anymore. He was the devil, and he had come to collect. Hello, lovelies. The suspense is at its peak. Ki-tae's protective instinct has turned into a thirst for vengeance. What will he do to the Parks? And how will Anita react when she wakes up to the news of her loss?